Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have my New Year's Day beer review 2021. So yeah, first off I want to wish all of you guys a very happy new year, and I hope that it's far better than 2020 was, but I don't think that's going to be hard, to be honest with you. We're getting very close to the end of this pandemic thing with all the vaccinations and stuff going around. Wear your face masks, do the social distancing thing, wash your hands and stay safe. That's the first and foremost thing I think everybody should do. But yeah, set yourself goals for this year. Push on, achieve them. That would be my other piece of advice. I've had a very, very productive year over 2020, which has been great. And yeah, fingers crossed 2021, I can finally see my son and Michiko again quite soon. It's been over a year now, which is just stupid with this whole pandemic sort of thing. But fingers crossed that is something that we can sort out in the next little while. But for this review, I think we have quite a special beer. So this one is half Scottish on the home side, half Japanese on the away side. So a Japa-Scot, if you like, as I call my son. And for this one, I think we've got a really, really cracking beer actually, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So for the home brewery then, we are going to go down to Galashiels in the Scottish borders, and we're having a look at another beer from Tempest Brewing Co, who are one of my favourite Scottish breweries actually. So this particular beer is called the Kesennuma Stout. It comes in at 10.8% ABV, an Imperial Stout with lots of different things in it, including Japanese oyster sauce, clove and cardamom. I think this is going to be very, very interesting. And then on top of that, it's barrel aged. But this is brewed in collaboration with Roto Brewery, who are a brew pub from Yokohama, just to the south of Tokyo in Japan. I've never been to Yokohama actually, but I think now that I've reviewed one of the beers involving them, I will need to go and check it out the next time I make it over there, hopefully later on in 2021. But yeah, always nice to introduce a new Japanese brewery to you here on the channel. I love reviewing the Japanese beers when I get the opportunity. There's about 100 or so Japanese beer reviews on the channel already actually, but definitely nice to return to Tempest as well, who, like I said, are one of my favourite Scottish breweries. If you are particularly interested in Japanese beers, do make sure you check out my friend Nevitt, who runs the channel Japanese Craft Beer, formerly Beering in Mind Beer Reviews. He's got a great channel over there, reviewing lots of different things from all over the place, but he has very good access to lots of different Japanese beers that he reviews very regularly on his channel. And fingers crossed you'll see him on my channel at some point later in the year as well. We're going to do some out and about filming in Osaka and Kyoto and things like that the next time I get out there. Lovely, lovely guy actually. But yeah, check out his channel in the meantime. I'll try and make sure to put the link to that in the video description below. But yeah, the Kesennuma Stout, 10.8% with oyster sauce and various other things, from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels here in Scotland, and Roto Brewery from Yokohama in Kanagawa Prefecture to the south of Tokyo in Japan. This is going to be pretty awesome. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Tempest Brewing Company before, and my future reviews that I'll do from Roto Brewing. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for both the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you, and another one for all the Japanese beers. Both are added to whenever I get the opportunity these days. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the breweries then, we'll kick off with Tempest Brewing Company, since these guys are the home brewery. So Tempest Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. Tempest Brewery, as I've told you before, were founded back in 2010 by Gavin and Anika Meiklejohn. So Anika trained as a chef in New Zealand, but the couple returned to Scotland in 2007 to return at the Cobbles Bar in Kelso. Gavin had previously worked for what is now Whistler Brewing Company in British Columbia over in Western Canada, so he had an appreciation for craft beer, and he also took some brewing courses in Sydney in Australia, and then later on he actually had a home brewing system in his garage in Wellington in New Zealand. He was brewing 50-litre batches down there, and that, you know, was really what was the foundations, if you like, for Tempest Brewing. Brewing Company. But Gavin and Anika are joined by Alan Rice, who acts as the business development manager. He previously worked in the same role for Stewart Brewery in Edinburgh, but then left to go abroad, and he also lived in New Zealand, Australia, and I think Canada for a period of time as well. But this brewery, the original brewery that they had, or that I think that they're still in actually. The brewery was in old dairy buildings in Kelso, and this was, you know, a largely homemade system that they had that was designed to produce, you know, big tasting beers on a very shoestring budget. But their beers proved to be very, very popular, and this gave them a lot of funding to kind of upgrade and things like that. So they moved to their new and larger and current facility at the Tweedbank Industrial Estate in Galashiels. In June of 2019, they submitted plans to build a new brewery building with a bar and restaurant on the site of the former Eldon Mill, which is very close to the fairly new Tweedbank railway station on the new Borders Railway, and that will open, fingers crossed, quite soon. I'm not sure what the progress on that brewery is as of December 2020 when I'm filming this review, but I'm sure it will be open at some stage, and I do want to go down there and visit it at some point in the future. But as of December 2020, like I said, when I'm filming this review, these guys have produced around 120 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and in my opinion they are one of the best breweries in Scotland. These guys consistently put very, very good things out there. You know, probably my favourite beers from these guys would be the Old Parochial. I saw that there's a barrel-aged version of that out just now that I need to try and get a hold of. I would love to review that one for you on the channel, but that in my opinion is one of the best sort of more American style, dare I say, Scottish brewed Scotch ales. I've had, you know, the I've had a black IPA from these guys before, which was really good. I forget the name of that now, but Brave New World was an awesome West Coast IPA. But these guys do some awesome stuff. The last beer I reviewed from these guys was the Double Denim, which was like a smoked barley wine, and that beer was good, but that was major overload. That thing was insane. But yeah, Tempest Brewing Company, as I say, one of the best and most consistent breweries that you're going to find in Scotland. So I would always recommend these guys to people that are interested in Scottish craft beer. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Tempest Brewing Company just now. I did have a comment from somebody at the brewery on my last video that I did, and they were inviting me down, so I need to look into that once this whole pandemic thing is done, because I would love to have an interview, a Meet the Brewery segment with the guys from Tempest Brewery once this whole pandemic thing buggers off. So maybe February's a little bit too early when I'm home next time, but maybe in September, late August, early September, we can sort that out. But yeah, awesome brewery, these guys, and one that I would always recommend that you check out. Brave New World is great. Long White Cloud, I guess, is their kind of signature beer, and they've got various other kind of special ones that I've reviewed for you over the years. Marmalade on Rye is a beautiful beer as well, a big orangey IPA actually. But yeah, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. Let's go on to the Japanese side of things then. So on to the second part of my notes, Roto Brewery. So Roto Brewery, as I mentioned to you earlier, are based in Yokohama in Kanagawa Prefecture, just to the south of Tokyo, the capital of Japan. And the brew pub can be found in the Kamioka area of the city, and it was founded back in 2018 by Tatsuya Ado. So apparently he runs 6 restaurants around the city. This includes the Parapunte ramen restaurant and also the Mahotoro sushi restaurant. And this Roto Brewery is basically a little brew pub that serves ramen and various other novelty foods alongside beer that's brewed in-house. It's a very small system they've got. It looked as if it was maybe about 200 litres at a time or something like this. But yeah, very, very small system that they have there. And I don't think you can get their beers in bottle or anything like this as of now. But one of the ventures is also one of the ventures that he has out of those 6 places is a bar where he works quite often as a bartender. But back in the day he discovered Brewdog's Punk IPA, and he was amazed to see what beer actually could be. This was back when Punk IPA was, you know, one of the top class beers, but not really anymore obviously. But from then on he was interested in brewing his own beer, and so he enrolled to study with the Department of Brewing Science at the Tokyo University of Agriculture. He studied and made beer for about a year, but then had to drop out because of all these work commitments. You know, owning a good few restaurants is a major thing in Japan, and you know, they have a very, very kind of how do you say, a very heavy work culture, if you like. They put in a hell of a lot of hours that, to be quite honest, they don't need to do. But yeah, he had a hell of a lot of work commitments basically, and by that time though, after having only studied for a year, he was confident enough in his own brewing ability to get started. So he brewed his first beer under the Roto Brewery name in April of 2018, and then he released it in the KQ department store in the city in the May of that year as well. But apparently the idea that he had of pairing ramen and beer is supposed to attract families, because this area of Yokohama, Kamioka, is quite, you know, it is quite suburban, to be honest with you, and it's families and grandpas and stuff like that that live around there. But yeah, the idea was that there was ramen and there was beer for people to go and drink, rather than it being solely a craft beer destination. But apparently Mikael of Mikkeller is a big ramen fan, hence why they've got those two ramen tobiru destinations in Copenhagen. But this is also said to have given some inspiration to Tatsuya as well, so that's one of the other reasons why he decided to do the whole beer and ramen sort of thing. But as of December 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 17 different beers according to Untappd, and like I said, hopefully I can go and film a little out and about video there at some stage. I do like filming the out and about videos in Japan, and people also seem to quite enjoy those. I do wish that I could do like an interview or something like that, but that is probably a project for a few years down the line when my Japanese has improved. I had to stop studying Japanese while I was doing the Swedish stuff, because the two languages just, it was a bit much to do that at the same time when the languages were so different. But I will start studying Japanese again, probably in like August or September of 2021, and perhaps that's something we can do maybe 2 or 3 years down the line. We'll see about doing that. But yeah, definitely cool to feature Roto Brewery on the channel for the first time, and fingers crossed we can do something there when I do eventually make it up to Yokohama. But the next time I'm in Japan, definitely more out and about videos, probably with Nevitt from Japanese craft beer, bearing in mind beer reviews as well. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Roto Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a look at this beer itself then. So I do have one or two little notes on the beer. So this is a 10.8% Imperial Stout. It contains Japanese oyster sauce, clove cardamom, and then it's aged for 11 months in Scotch whisky barrels. It didn't say what exact whisky barrel it was aged in, but the name Kesennuma Stout, it's taken from the city of Kesennuma in Miyagi in Japan, which is a famous fishing town, and you know, when it's basically an oyster stout, I guess. I think it should be quite interesting. But yeah, it says it doesn't actually contain oysters, but it contains oyster sauce. So, you know, the oyster sauce does contain fish bits and things like that. So yeah, it does say on the side that this one is not suitable for vegetarians. So yeah, pretty cool. But it says on the side here, sometimes you have to go halfway around the world to come full circle. Bob Harris lost in translation. But brewed in collaboration with Yokohama's Roto Brewery, this is a salty, sweet, spicy, umami Imperial Stout, and unlike anything you've tasted before, combining Japanese oyster sauce, clove cardamom, sweet malt, and oaky whiskey flavours, require the deft hand of a true shokunin master. So yeah, pretty cool actually. But yeah, I think it's quite nice that they named it after a famous fishing town, of course. Fish, of course, is a huge part of the Japanese diet with sushi and things like that. I actually, oddly enough, I don't eat fish. There's one or two fish that give me really bad stomach problems, so I just stay away from it. And in Japan, Michiko loves fish, so it tends to annoy her a little bit. She goes to the seafood restaurant, and I just kind of sit there and eat like cheese or something like that if they've got little things. But that's just how it goes. So I miss out on quite a bit of the food in Japan, but you can survive. You couldn't really survive as a vegetarian in Japan, I wouldn't say that, but you can survive if like me, you're not a great fan of fish. But yeah, nicely presented, this one. This seems to be a new symbol that Tempest Brewing Company have been using recently, this sort of lightning bolt in the glass, which is pretty cool. But yeah, wax top on this one. I think this is the first wax top that I've had from Tempest Brewing Company. But yeah, this should be really nice. It doesn't say on the side when it was bottled. They've put a sticker over that it says best before the 20th of the 2nd, 2022. So maybe this beer was brought out at the start of the year, because usually they say that it's due a couple of years in advance. But yeah, let's get this guy out and get on with the tasting anyway. I'm curious to see what this has in store for us, if I can actually get the thing out. So this might take a little second. So yeah, sorry about the edit there, guys. I did manage to get it. I managed to crack it. There we go. Yes, there we are. I did manage to pop it. So yeah, sorry about the edit there. I should have. That's amateur hour, guys. That is amateur hour. Forgetting to put, take the knife. The best way, if incidentally, to get these things open is just, take a knife and go right round the edge, and then it usually pops straight open. I should have done that. Should have had the foresight to do that, but wasn't thinking. Was just excited about the beer. Sometimes happens, But yeah, let's get this guy out and into the glass. You could see there was virtually no smoke on this one as we opened it up. But yeah, I think this is going to be a little bit of a monster. This is a night-ending beer. Absolutely. But, oh, that does smell pretty good actually. The Japanese, I always love, soy sauce. I love soy sauce in it. That little sniff I got there was just like that. So in Japan, sorry, you get a number of soy sauce beers that are very, very good actually. I really, really like them, but I love, dark and strong flavours like that. It's great. But yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this guy has poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If you shine the light through it, in fairness, it does have a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to it. There is a little bit of a thin kind of foamy layer to this one. It has left a little bit of a kind of foamy ring around the edge of the glass, which is quite nice. But yeah, the head has faded away on this one quite early, but yeah, it certainly looks good. But yeah, there is a considerable bit of clarity to this one, which these days is surprising with an Imperial Stout. Usually a lot of Imperial Stouts are not so clear as this, but this one would be transparent if it wasn't quite so dark. But yeah, lovely ebony rosewood colour. Remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on two things. One, the type of malts that they use, and I guess we can put adjuncts into that bracket as well, and two, the length of the boil. Big Imperial Stouts like this will probably have at least a 4 or 5, 6 hour boil maybe, something like that. Big Imperial Stouts tend to have a big thing like this, but what happens when you boil the beer longer is that the sugars caramelise more, they turn a darker colour, and voila, there you go. But remember, the actual type of malts that you use in the beginning plays a role in that as well. So obviously in a big dark beer like this, you're going to have many dark malts and things like that. So yeah, this one is obviously going to be a very, very dark beer, but it certainly looks the part of an Imperial Stout. Not a lot of head on this one. It doesn't say that it says it's got oats in it, but it also has a little bit of wheat, so in a way that is a little bit surprising, because usually wheat helps a little bit with head retention. But yeah, not a lot of head on this one. And the other thing to consider there is the alcohol content. Not the heaviest Imperial Stout I've come across at 10.8%, but yeah, it is maintaining a little foamy ring there, so what can you do? But yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one and see how we got on. Nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance, so let's have a closer look at it and see how we get on. Really curious about this. Oh, I don't even know what to say about that. Damn. It's almost... The first thing that comes to mind when I smell that, it's like if you get licorice syrup and you smell that and you take it in really deeply, it's almost a little bit eucalyptus-like in some ways. That's the first thing. It smells like something that clears the tubes up here. If you get a little bit, if you get your block, that's what comes to mind when I smell this beer first. It's probably the clove and the cardamom that's doing that. Yeah, it's the clove and the cardamom are the things that come out of this one straight away, actually. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the clove and the cardamom that's in this that's doing that. Yeah, it's interesting. This is actually, it's kind of strange this, because if I'm going by the date this thing's been released, I would guess sometime in, it looks as if it's been bottled in maybe February of 2020, if not before, but February of some year, and then it would, it almost comes across in the same way as some of these Swedish Christmas Imperial Stouts that I've had, like the Lussebulle Stouts and things like this. It's got that real kind of spicy edge to it, which is quite interesting. So yeah, it'll be the clove and the cardamom that you're getting out of this one. Straight away, they dominate the aroma, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, straight away with this one, you've got a bit of clove and cardamom in there. It does have a wee bit of a sort of soy sauce type thing going on underneath. You can smell a little bit of the kind of oaty smoothness to the beer. You can get a little bit of a kind of dark, high cocoa chocolate, 80-90% kind of cocoa. But the clove and the cardamom really, really dominate the aroma here, and they almost give you a little bit of a kind of licoricey, they almost give you a little bit of a sort of licorice kind of almost licorice and cinnamon type vibe, actually, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very, very spicy smelling stout, this one. And it's interesting, I don't think I've had too many beers from Tempest that have had adjuncts in them, come to think of it. So this is another first from Tempest in that regard. Roto Brewery, like I said, I've got no idea about. Be curious to see what they've got. They had a few, they were brewing kind of quite straight up beers, I think. They were brewing IPAs and lager beers and stuff like that, and stouts and things in their place. But yeah, the aroma of that is a very, very kind of spicy. It's almost like a kind of Christmas stout, to be honest with you, this one. So like I say, you get the clove and the cardamom straight away. In this one, it almost gives you the impression of a little bit of a licoricey sort of thing. You do get a wee bit of that kind of soy sauce vibe to it. A high, 80-90% cocoa chocolate coming out of this one for sure. Yeah, that I think is your malt base. There's a few sort of woody undertones to it. Maybe it's a little touch kind of leathery. Yeah, there's definitely a wee sort of leathery and woody kind of backbone to this beer, which is really interesting for sure. Yeah, I like how this beer goes together. This one, it just makes me very, very curious. I would have thought the oyster sauce would have been a little bit more kind of prominent in it, to be honest. But I mean, Japanese cooking is very sort of sauce and spice based, if you like. They love a bit of garlic as well. That's the other thing. Japanese food it's brilliant. A lot of people just think it's sushi, but no, it's not. There's lots of other things in there as well. Ramen, udon, gyoza, and all these kind of things. Gyoza are my favourite food, but I always get told that those are more Chinese. Yeah, this is a very spicy smelling Imperial Stout, this one. I think we've kind of described that. It smells like it's got a woody backbone, a little bit leathery as well. There's some nice kind of soy saucy type elements to it. Yeah, some nice kind of soy saucy elements to it. You get the clove and the cardamom sitting in there. A high 80% sort of cocoa chocolate out of this one. It goes together very, very nicely actually. But yeah, I like how the malty side of this beer goes together. On the hoppy side of things, there's not too much to report, to be honest with you. So it's got a nice little bit of, it has got a nice little bit of a kind of earthy quality to it. There's a wee bit of floral note in there, a bit of grassiness as well. I'd be curious to know what hops they'll be using in this. Will it be a little bit of Bramling's Cross or Goldings, one of the English hops, or will it be an American one like Summit or something like that? But yes, it's the green side of the hops. A little bit of grassiness, wee tiny touch of floral quality and a bit of earthiness. But the other thing to remember is that this was aged for 11 months in barrels. So by the time I'm getting round to this one, it's probably, most of the hoppy character will probably have dropped out. It's been in the barrel for 11 months and then it's probably waited a good few months in the bottle in Valhalla's Goat before I've picked it up. So yeah, but yeah, not too much to report on the green side of the hops for sure. On the fruity side of things, it's got a wee bit of a kind of datey, pruny, kind of figgy sort of thing going on with it. It's almost a little touch phenolic, like a Belgian Dubel in some ways, which is quite interesting. It does have a little bit of that kind of thing going on with it, and usually that comes from the reactions of the yeast with the candy sugar that they put in those beers. But yeah, it really has a little bit of that going on, so like a datey, a kind of datey, pruny sort of thing. Maybe a little bit of sultana, something like that. There is a wee bit of there is a little bit of that kind of blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing in this one, which maybe would indicate a little bit of Kent Golding or Bramling's Cross or something. But yeah, the character that this beer has is really quite interesting. I just noticed on the side here it's also got a bit of rye in it, but you don't really detect the rye in the aroma, to be quite honest with you. It's more it's more all the kind of, it's more all everything else. It's more the spices that come out, but cardamom and clove are going to cover up the spiciness of rye, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's a really quite quirky aroma. That's one of the quirkiest ones that I've come across in quite a while. So knowing Tempest and having a quirky aroma, that makes me very curious. So let's have a look at this one and see how we get on. This one is the Kesennuma Stout, named after Kesennuma in Miyagi Prefecture, a very famous fishing town in Japan. This beer is a collaboration between Tempest Brewing Company and Galashiels down in the Scottish borders, and Roto Brewery, who are from Yokohama. I was going to say the the name of the district's gone right out of my head, but they're from Yokohama in Kanagawa Prefecture, just to the south of Tokyo. 10.8% Imperial Stout. Let's get stuck into this one. A very happy new year 2021. Like I said, I want to dedicate this review to my son, who likewise is half Japanese, half Scottish, a Japoscot as I like to call him. Let's get stuck in. Douglas Masamune, hope to see you soon, little guy. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, Skål, Kampai, and a very happy new year, guys. Cheers. Yeah, that's interesting for sure. It's definitely one of these beers that really develops into the aftertaste. This is one I think that you really, just on the little sip that I've had there, this is one that you really need to kind of just let mellow out, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah, this one, you know, this is really quite different from what I've had from Tempest before. And you know, this is one of the ones I can see straight away with this one. I think people that who drink a lot of Tempest beer, this one, unless you're familiar with Japanese food, I think a lot of people might not get exactly where this beer's going. But having spent quite a lot of time in Japan, tried lots of different things, I really get what they're going for here. So yeah, I can see it. I can imagine that this beer is maybe not going to be one of the higher rated ones that that Tempest are going to do. But I really, as I say, if you understand Japanese food, you'll see exactly what they're going for here. This is a really like savoury type stout actually. It comes across as nowhere near as bold as some of their other beers, you know, like the double denim that we had, the old parochial. It's nowhere near as bold as these, but you know, it's almost a bit of a cliche to say, but it's almost like you could say like it embodies the Japanese kind of humility, almost. It kind of it embodies the Japanese modesty, their kind of modest attitude that they have in a lot of ways. You know, it's really like that. This is a beer, it's one of these beers that you need to let sit, let it open up, and just, it's the aftertaste. This beer is all about the aftertaste for sure. So yeah, like I say, I think a lot of people that will try this from Tempest, compared to their other beers, I think they're maybe, you know, they're maybe not going to quite get what this is going for. But if you've tried like lots of different soy sauces and different types of Japanese food, and you know, and this is the thing, in Europe, we really get very little of what the Japanese have to offer, to be honest with you. So this beer is quite unique in that sense. So I'm going to say thumbs up to Tempest for doing something that's really quite out there. So this is one of these beers I would say ignore the Untappd ratings. I didn't look at what it was, I didn't look at what the Untappd rating was, but I think this is one of these ones, it's more of like a, you know, sort of educational beer. This is more of like an experience rather than being a beer that's designed to kind of blow the socks off you, if that makes sense. That's how I would kind of interpret this one. But yes, a very, very savoury stout, this one actually. Definitely. So let's try. I can feel this beer review is going to turn into a little bit of a ramble, I think, just because of how kind of unusual this beer is. Let's just say that. He's took some of that down the wrong way. Talk about giving wrong impressions on your beer reviews, but there we go. Some of that went down the wrong tube. I was trying to ponder on that, so I took it in. Ugh. Yeah, you'll get a good few screenshots out of that. If that comes up as one of the thumbnails when I upload the video, I'll laugh. But yeah. Yeah, so with this one, how do we say? It's got a real... When you take this beer in, it really comes across. You get the spice, you get the cardamom and the clove out of this right away. You get the cardamom and clove out of it right away. Yeah, when you take this beer in, on the front of your palate, you get the cardamom and the clove on it, and it's got that almost kind of licoricey type vibe to it as well, which is kind of quite interesting. The cinnamon things, I think it might give you the impression of cinnamon in the aroma, but it's not going to give you that in the it's definitely not going to give you that in the flavour. It's a, as I say, a very, very kind of savoury thing. But what you'll notice straight away with this beer, it does have, you can definitely get the rye in this one. You can feel a little bit of that kind of brown bready, grainy sort of rye thing. That forms the backbone of the beer. That's your base point on this beer. On top of that, you get a little bit of a smooth oaty thing in the middle third of your palate, and then as you go on to the back third of your palate, you can feel the smoothness of the wheat. So the kind of the malts are forming the backbone of this beer, not simply the kind of adjuncts, if that makes sense. As you go further into the aftertaste with this one, if you go onto the front corners of your palate and then go back a little bit, like diagonally back, you'll pick up a few kind of woody things coming out of this one. The leathery note that I was talking about in the aroma doesn't really come across in the flavour, definitely not. It's got a little, it does have a little bit of a woodiness to it, and that'll probably come from the barrel aging. Remember that when it comes to Scotch whisky, it's definitely a lot more kind of grainy and almost toasty in a sense compared to the bourbon barrel aging. Bourbon barrel aging, American whisky is always going to give you an element of sweetness. Scottish barrel aging will usually give you a little bit of, you know, a little bit of a kind of charriness or something like that, or a bit of earth and peat. It depends what kind of whisky has occupied the barrel before. But yeah, the stuff that comes out of this, the flavours that come out of this are really, really interesting. So you've got wood in there, and it's definitely a bit of a kind of drier wood, and that works well with the rye base the beer has. Oats on top and the middle third, and then wheat further back. So yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about this beer for sure. Yeah, so for me, this it's interesting because on top of that, that's in the middle third of your palate, you can feel the clove and the cardamom in this beer. It's almost like they're infused into the sort of rye kind of bready base that the beer has, and the oats as well. The beer, it really goes from being very slick in the beginning, and it's the transition of the mouthfeel in this that really makes it come out. You really get the beer really dries up in the middle of your palate, to be honest with you, and that's when you get the clove and the cardamom, and they really start to kind of dominate the flavour in this one. There is a very slight sort of, you know, the soy sauce thing. There is the oyster sauce. I forget exactly what Japanese oyster sauce is made of. It's made I think it's basically made in the same way as soy sauce, but it's got like bits of oyster in it, essentially. I think that's kind of how it goes. It's basically a fermented kind of bean product, if I remember rightly. But yeah, you can get that in the middle of your palate. It has that really, on top of that sort of, you know, on top of the oats, that's where you get this kind of soy saucy type quality there. And then it's almost like in the middle of your palate you've got a circle, and then you've got the smooth oats, and at the edge of that circle you've got the cardamom and the clove kind of sitting there, and then on the top of that kind of smooth oaty circle, that's where the kind of soy saucy, oyster saucy type flavours kind of sit in this one. If you move into the back third of your palate, you definitely get more of that clovey cardamom sort of spice sitting on top of the wheat and the rye. So yeah, the malty side of this one, I think, is really interesting. They've got in brackets on the back of the bottle here mollusks. So yeah, that's, you know, specific type of oyster. As I say, I'm not into seafood at all. There will be people watching this video that know more than me about that. But yeah, I don't really get a saltiness out of this beer, which is quite surprising. Like I say, it is more a kind of savoury type thing, to be honest with you. So this beer, the malty and adjunct side of this beer is really, really quite interesting. And I would say that my sort of hypothesis statement that I put forward earlier, where I say this is probably not going to be one of the most highly rated beers that Tempest will do, I'd say that holds up. I really think you need to understand what Japanese food is all about before you kind of try this one, to be honest with you. And you know, the only really Japanese food that we get in Scotland, at least, would be sushi. There are a few ramen places around, right enough, but the ramen I've had in Scotland is not authentic. It's not the proper stuff that you're going to get in Osaka and things like that. You know, this beer really is a lot like, there's so many different sauces over there. I can never remember the names of the foods that I eat in Japan, but as someone who has experience of the Japanese of Japanese gastronomy, if you like, to a very, very limited extent right enough. I really get what they're trying to do with this one, and it's just a very, very savoury beer, this one. So I would recommend this beer for people who have been in Japan and tried a lot of different food. Otherwise, I think you'll maybe, if you know Tempest, I think this is one of the ones where you'd be kind of thinking, like, what are they trying to do here? That's what you would really think with this beer. As I say, this review's turning into a bit of a ramble trying to interpret this beer, but I'm trying to do my best, let's say that. But yeah, I think we've described the adjuncty, malty side of this beer quite enough. There is a wee bit of a kind of chocolatey vibe to this one, you know, but not too much. I think the other things kind of suppress the kind of chocolatey vibe that this beer has. But yeah, there is a wee bit of a kind of, you know, 70-80ish% cocoa chocolate in there. You get a little bit of it in the aftertaste, but it's all about the adjuncts and that sort of soy saucy, oyster saucy kind of thing the further you go, and it's very woody as well, as we said. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. Yeah. Not too much to report on the hoppy side of things. A little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward along the side of the tongue, you get a wee bit of a herbal quality. As you reach the front corners of the palate, just a little bit of floral aromaticity, but not a lot. Most of the hops, it's actually quite smooth on the side of your palate rather than bitter, so that would indicate that most of the hoppy side of things has kind of dropped out of this beer as it's matured in the barrel. I mean, it's 11 months in the barrel, I think they said, and then I guess I would say that this has probably been in the bottle about 10 months, just going by the dates on it, I'm guessing. But yeah, so this beer is in essence, you know, the best part of 2 years old, between 18 months and 2 years old. So most of the hoppy character is going to have dropped out of it. But around the front curve of the palate, it's got a wee bit of grassiness to it. It has got there is a little bit of herbalness on the front third of your palate as well. But yeah, let's focus on that front third of your tongue where the fruity, juicy esters roll their way out of the beer. Yeah, when you take this beer in then, it has got a wee bit of an almost kind of plummy juiciness to it, but that very quickly, it sort of just becomes a little bit more datey or pruny or something like that. There is a little bit of an almost kind of cakey element to this beer, but it really is, it's more savoury rather than anything else. You can feel that sort of soy saucy, woody kind of thing that sits underneath the fruity characters on that front third of the palate, and again the spice, you know, the cardamom and the clove push their way forward as well, so that pushes its way out of this beer and kind of almost takes away a bit from the fruity side of things. But yeah, definitely as you move towards the front half of that front third of your tongue, it has got a wee bit of a blackcurranty blackberry sort of thing, but again, it's there, it's very quick and then it's gone. And that is replaced by a more sort of cakey type, boozy, you know, datey, pruny type thing. Those are the two notes. It's almost got a little bit of a sultana type quality to it as well, which is really quite interesting. So I do like how that how all of that goes together in this one. It's a really interesting beer, this one. I really get what they're going for with this. And this is a beer that I think the Japanese would really enjoy and really, you know, have with some of these crazy foods that they're producing in the Roto brew pub. But I do have to admit, I think it is something that Scottish people might struggle to get a little bit, because we're just the Scottish diet is terrible, to be quite honest with you. But I think this is a beer that Scottish people might struggle to get a little bit. You don't get a lot of oyster stouts and things like that in Japan, and it really reminds me of a few of the soy sauce type beers that I've had from a few different breweries over in Japan, like Isekadoya and you know, and breweries like this. That's what this one really kind of reminds me of more than anything. So a very, very savoury stout, this one. You don't get a lot of saltiness out of this beer, although in fairness, in the middle of your palate, as you go into the aftertaste, you will get a little bit of that. But yeah, I think this is a beer that's very much suited to the Japanese palate, not so much to the Scottish. So unless you are fairly well acquainted with Japanese food, I think compared to the other Tempest beers you can try, this one's going to be a little bit out there for you. That would be my interpretation of this one. Is it my favourite beer I've had from Tempest? I don't know if Tempest for me will ever be Old Parochial. I think that beer is up on a pedestal, and Brave New World as well. I really like, you know, awesome beers. And I think that, you know, this one doesn't knock those off the pedestal, so the answer has to be no. But I get what they're trying to do with this one, I really do. But yeah, let's focus on the mouthfeel then. Let's focus on that. So yeah, it's kind of top end of mid-bodied, this one, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's a really, really slick beer, this, rather than anything. So a smooth, very kind of smooth and slick beer. The malty side of things, it's got quite a little bit of bitterness to it, this beer. I would guess that this beer has at least 50 or 60 IBUs, but I think part of that is coming from the savoury sort of thing. I mean, it's a lot of these pastry stouts and things that you try these days are very, very sweet, but this beer it's almost like a pastry stout, but just definitely more savoury rather than sweet. To be honest, I think that's another interesting perspective to take on this beer. But yeah, I would say about 50 or 60 IBUs. The malty side and the adjuncty side of this beer is very smooth. It's got a bit of a spicy dryness to it, but it's not madly dry. It is more kind of slick and smooth in a lot of ways. There's a tiny little bit of fruitiness to it, and it is a little bit dry in that sense too. But I mean, overall, it's a very, very quirky beer, this one. Very suited to the Japanese palate, a bit out there for the Scottish palate in my mind. But, you know, Tempest have always been experimental. They're not scared to try different things. And this one really does kind of embody that, to be honest with you. So thumbs up to them for trying something different, I will say that. But it doesn't top Old Parochial for me. Old Parochial is still the best beer. And I really hope that I can get one of the barrel-aged versions of that to review for you. It was in little 330 cans, actually. So I need to try and get one of those. But, yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Kesennuma Stout, an Imperial Stout coming in at 10.8% ABV with clove, cardamom, Japanese oyster sauce, brewed at Tempest Brewing Co in Galashiels down in the Scottish borders in collaboration with Roto Brewery from Yokohama in Kanagawa Prefecture to the south of Tokyo in Japan. Crazy, crazy beer, this one. Really interesting, and this is definitely one of my more rambly beer reviews. So for that, I apologise, but I hope you've enjoyed it nonetheless. As I said earlier, very happy 2021 to you guys. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have tried this beer, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from Tempest Brewing Company and from Roto. We will return to Tempest quite soon, I have no doubt of that. And fingers crossed I can do something in the fairly near future with Roto and do an out and about video or something like that. But yeah, awesome to be able to try this one. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Happy New Year 2021, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Till the next time, Slanger just now. Check out my social media, check out my other reviews from both of these breweries, and a very happy New Year 2021. The Kesennuma Imperial Stout, 10.8% ABV from Tempest Brewing Company, Galashiels, Scotland, and Roto Brewery in Yokohama, Kanagawa, Japan. Slanger, Skål, Kampai, cheers, catch you on the next review.